Okay, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Creative Cranium. Tonight, I have a terrific guest, and I'm excited to welcome him. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Aaron Jordan. Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, nice. Thank you for having me. It's great to be on the show.
Yeah, man. You and I met once before over at Phil's show, wasn't it? Phil Locklear? I forget where it was we met.
Oh yeah, it was Brian Christgau.
Oh, right. Exactly. And, I thought you were a really interesting guest even then. And I'm definitely interested in learning more about your book and about your creative process. What we try to do on this show is to learn a little bit about the creators that we admire and what kind of things inspire them. So, without further delay, I'm going to launch right into it. Let's start out, Aaron, if you don't mind, tell us who you are and a little bit about your product.
So, I am a writer, and I'm also the creative owner of Wolfsbane Comics, which is a comic book company with books that'll make you howling. Well, that'll make you howl. But so far right now we have our first book already out. It's going to be launching on our website pretty soon, wolfsbanecomics.com. But we also have a new book coming to Kickstarter in May. And the book Wolfsbane is pretty much about this kid who's also a werewolf. But as a teenager, you have your own problems, and somehow the problems in his life are worse than his actual condition. And that mixed in with the crime element is gonna be pretty fun because we have some detectives that are hunting him down because he accidentally took a life.
Ah, perfect. Well, and it's a little bit of this is like a crime horror comic, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Hey, and also welcome aboard, Cece. I see you there.
Hi.
Welcome. Hey, you're right on time, so we're good there. And first of all, I just have a quick comment. So I knew you as Amelia. Is it okay to call you Cece?
Absolutely. In fact.
Oh, hold on. She got disconnected there. Well, you and I will keep going. So we're talking about the horror detective elements of the Wolfsbane comic, which I would start by saying, how did you get the idea for a horror detective story?
So this was actually a pretty good story. I was watching the Wolfman of 2010 one day, and I thought, wouldn't it be a cool idea to, have a werewolf of my own? And back then, and still even now today, my favorite aspect of horror is pretty much, the suspense and the mystery of it. So why not have a detective story to go along with that? And I took inspiration from stuff like Casablanca and, NCIS and stuff like that.
Yeah. And by the way, I think that's a terrific idea to meld those two together. And, I'll be following this campaign, and I'll put the links in the comments, and we'll pop them up in the ticker as well. So, Cece, I'm going to jump back to you because we skipped over the introduction. Real quick, can you tell us, for the viewers, who you are and a quick synopsis of your project?
Yeah, so I'm Cece, and I write for Mythfall. Mythfall is a fantasy epic in space, and it is the story of a Malcolm Terrasmus, who is a alien bureaucrat, and he is trying to keep war from breaking out on his planet, but he discovers that the foe that is agitating for war is actually a 5,000-year-old entity from an ancient age of magic.
I like it. And, I will disclose to you that before I knew who you were, this is Mythfall. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes.
This is one of the projects that I stumbled across. I'm a fan of that kind of stuff as well. And I thought, this one looks pretty good. So I was thrilled when I got your message. And I asked Aaron this question. Yeah, I want to ask you too. When you were putting it together, and did I understand correctly, you're the writer?
Yes.
Okay. How did you get the idea? Where did you get the influences that became Mythfall?
Yeah, so Mythfall is a project that's been in the works a long time, and it's been like a big melting pot for basically all my influences. My number one influence, probably in my whole life in general, would be Lord of the Rings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too, buddy. You're in the right room.
So it's safe to say that has a strong thumbprint. The first Western comic that I really fell all the way into is Sandman. And
nice. Yeah.
So another experience that I had that had probably an effect on this comic and how it turned out is the movie Gattaca. So it's a big melting pot there. I have a lot of interest in fantasy sources and a lot of interest in sci-fi sources, and I just wanted to throw them all into one big project and kind of meld them together and see what we get.
Well, it looks terrific, and it looks terrific. So just to clarify here, because we're going to go around in circle with some of the questions. So all three of us in this room are writers, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to jump back to Aaron now. The next question I want to ask you. So all three of us are writers, and there's a number of different paths that we could have taken, right? And myself, I was a short story writer for many years, and I was never really able to get that off the ground. But what I want to know is about both of you, starting with you, Aaron. Out of all the paths that you could have taken, why comics?
Honestly, I just love to use my creativity, and I personally think that comics is it's a unique blend of all the things that I love. You have the cinematics of like traditional filmmaking. You have the artistic expression, and you have like the dialogue and the prose of novels. So it's a really good combination.
Gotcha. And Cece, how about you? Were you always a comic writer, or why comics for you?
Yeah, so Mythfall actually started out as a novel. Your kind of stereotypical epic trilogy of genre novels. But a couple of years ago, some friends of mine, so I work with an indie publisher. I am an indie publisher. And we are Addictoid Media. It's me and my three co-conspirators. And the first title that we published was Incident Report. And so two friends and my husband got together, and they wanted to produce their superhero slice of life project as a comic. And it had bounced around it started as a comic project initially, and they considered a novel, they considered a TV pilot, and they circled back to comics because that was a real foundational influence for them. They're big into Marvel, and they felt that the right move for that project was to be a comic. And so we created Addictoid Media as a vehicle to publish that. And so my husband approached me and he said, "Hey, Mythfall, I think could be really cool as a comic. Why don't you give it a shot?" So I had a draft all the way to the end of the first book of Mythfall as prose at that point. And I jumped into trying it out as a comic script. And I really enjoyed the process of writing it and the scripting style. And I enjoyed also the collaborative nature of comics because I was able to find my co-creator, illustrator Ali Pretzlick, and we worked together on it. And that's been a really cool experience as well. Whereas prose can be like a very solo experience for long swaths. Sure. Yeah.
And let's tie into that thought a little bit. I'm gonna turn this question around to tie into what you said, Cece. Now, you mentioned that comics are a very collaborative experience. And just a quick aside, I've noticed from meeting a lot of the creators, many of them were musicians or band members. And in one aspect, being a comic creator is very similar to being in a band. And what I mean by that is that you've got to have the right drummer and the right lead guitarist and the right lead vocalist. So I'll start with Aaron. When you pick your creative team, what are the qualities that you look for in the team? And in the case of Wolfsbane, how did you choose them?
Well, for my overall process, I usually go with what suits the theme of the book. And in Wolfsbane's case, I really wanted to capture this air of this sort of eeriness and how would I say it? Like I wanted the world to be something that was both mundane and supernatural at the same time. So I needed someone that could lean into horror, but was really grounded in making it look like an actual detective story.
Yeah, you know what? I kind of get that. I've seen some of the panels, and I'd say they succeeded. Let's give a quick shout out. Who is on your team for Wolfsbane?
Oh yeah, definitely. So you have the penciler and inker Thomas Muzzle. You have the colorist Alexander Kutry. Right now, the letter is for the current book is Tom Beavis, and let's see, we have Brian S. Kerr, Juan Kagampan, I believe that's how you say his last name, and Smelling. He's working with me for another book, but all of them helped with some form of the covers.
Okay. It's interesting you mentioned that. I've noticed that one of the things too is that comic making is a very international experience. Is that also the case for both of you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the only American on my team. There's 11 of us and I'm the only American.
Oh, dang.
So Cece, I'm going to jump back to you. In your creative team, similar question. First off, how did you choose them? And the second thing is, what I'd like to know is, did you know of their work beforehand? Did you actively seek them out? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So the first and maybe like a very key part of building the team for me was finding the illustrator, because I am coming from a writing background, and particularly a non-comics writing background. I needed someone who would be able to partner with me on the visual elements of the storytelling, understanding things about, the coloring and lettering and paneling, even in some, and so having the right partner by my side to transition it into a comic book was vitally important. And then the other thing that I really wanted was someone who had who drew with a diversity of body types and really like expressive faces. I have a wide cast, and so I want them to look distinct. And sometimes in manga, which is primarily what I read growing up, and also in superhero comics, you can sometimes see like one template for male characters and one template for female characters, and then you just change the uniforms. And so I wanted to make sure that the illustrator that I partnered with would create character designs that were really like unique for each character, in their like vibe, I guess. And the expressions of the characters would be really Ali Presswick is the illustrator that I partnered with, and her expressions in her art are so vivid that I almost don't miss like the interior narration of the characters, because their faces are so expressive that it brings across so much of the inner life that you would normally lose switching from prose to comic. So I found Ali online. Ali does a lot of work for the Marvel card game, and I found her on ArtStation after much searching, just trying to find like the exact right person. And it's really funny because I was scrolling through Instagram like earlier this week, and there was a picture of Belladonna that popped up in my feed, and I was like, wow, that's so good. Who is that? And it was Ali.
Oh, nice.
And so I was looking up reference photo for something else, and she's like, hey, did you know that you put my art in here? And I was like, nope, just found stuff I liked. So so that was really key. And then Ali basically helped me find Aaron. So Aaron Angelini is our colorist. They are amazing, so fantastic. And they're doing all kinds of cool projects. And so when we were discussing what we were looking for out of the colors, because Ali was able to, Ali had like a vision for the colors, and she was like, this is what we want, and this is what we should be looking for, and the lighting should be like this. So Ali said someone who would be really great is if we could find somebody like Aaron. So we reached out to Aaron just on a lark, and they were available, and we were like, oh my God. And so Aaron was able to join the team, and that's been really great and exciting. And our letterer is Haley Rose Lyon, who they worked with us on Incident Report previously. So I was very familiar with their letters, and I knew that they would do a really great job. We had some complex requirements from the lettering because of the setting and the changes in the setting. And so I wanted someone who could do advanced things with bubbles.
Yeah. Sure.
And
quality lettering can make or break a book, I always say.
Yeah. The editor on Mythfall is Barbara Perez Marquez. I found her on Twitter. There are threads where people can promote their work on Twitter, and so I was able to connect with her there. She's really great. She's Eisner nominated, and she gave me a lot of really important feedback for that first adaptation. That was important for getting it right.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Now, the next question I'd like to ask you, I'm always interested in the creative process, and maybe especially for the people that are watching. As you know, this will be rerun all throughout the Madness Network. So all kinds of customers and creators will be able to see your feedback on how you make the books. And that's why I like to ask some specific questions, because we're all a little bit different, right? I'm going to start with Aaron. In your process, when you start to make the book, like everybody does it a little differently, and there's no wrong answer. Do you start with the plot? Do you start with the characters? Do you have a script outline? What's step one in Aaron's process of Wolfsbane?
Well, first I try to think of like an exciting event or incident. Like with Wolfsbane, going through the first arc, I wanted to have something that was like a really interesting thing that I've always wanted to see, or something that I think that would be pretty spectacular. And then I just work my way around that. And if it's a new story, then I'll come up with characters that could feel, like that could be filled into the world. And I don't know. It's pretty strange.
Well, and that's the great thing, right? Is that there's really no wrong answer, especially in comics making, because for some people it's art. Some people design the characters first and kind of see where they go. I'd like to hear from Cece next. And a quick comment. There's some interesting elements about Mythfall, which I thought was kind of cool. It gives off the vibe. You mentioned it first, so I'm just going to touch on it. It definitely has that sort of Lord of the Rings / Game of Thrones vibe. And I mean that in a most complimentary sense. So when I got to guess that yours is probably plot first, or it might be characters. I'd like to hear how you did your process.
Yeah. So Mythfall has been in development for a long time, that like so many elements of it have changed. Do
you mind if I ask you real quick? You say a long time. To your mind, what was a long time for development?
I started this in middle school. It's one of those projects where it's like just the thing that you kind of, it's like a worry stone where you have this sort of like kernel of an idea, and you just worry it and worry it and worry it until it becomes smooth. And that's been what the process has been like. So what I started with actually was a concept, and the concept was a multiverse, and that multiverse concept is now gone from the project. But I started from the concept and then added characters, and the characters stayed. So even as I threw away different elements of the project, plot-wise and setting-wise and concept-wise, I kept accumulating characters that I liked, and I would hold on to them. And through each change, they would shift and develop to fit the world, and the world and the characters kind of grew up around each other.
That's kind of neat. And I definitely think you have some original looking characters there. I'll just add a quick aside, because I always emphasize that there's no wrong way to make a person's project, because I probably do it the wrong way by many people's assessment. What I do, and I mentioned this last week on the show, I write mine backwards. And here's what I mean by that. Much like a mystery novel, which is the way they do it, I sort of frame the story. So what I mean by frame, I was always a huge Edgar Allan Poe fan, and he did a thing called singularity of effect. And what he meant by that was that you choose the emotion that you're trying to convey, and then that you structure your story around whatever emotion it is. And I personally like emotional comics. And what I don't mean necessarily that you're crying your eyes out, but either it's got like a, maybe a potentially sad ending or an emotional ending, something that makes you feel something. So what I do, I start with the last page as what I would call an emotional impact, and then I write it backwards and show how they got there.
That's so cool. That's like aspirational. This reminds me of the people who like they come up with a title and then build out like an entire story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. To like start at the end and be like, this is gonna be the amazing twist, and then work all the way backwards is so cool to me.
Yeah, and we were kind of riffing earlier on how there's a lot of links between music and comic book making. And I would always put that to the sense of many times it could be the guitar lead or whatever your theme is, that one, 4 or 5 notes together, and then you build the song around that.
True.
So great answers, by the way. And man, I always love to talk to other creators because I feel that it's something we all could learn from, And one of the things that I noticed is that all 3 of us have varying degrees of crowdfunding experience, right? So I'm going to ask you a little bit about that. I'll jump back to Cece. Is Aaron, are you still there? Okay. Actually, I'll go to Aaron. That's okay, man. Just to keep the circle. So Wolfsbane, which there's many interesting things about it, but this isn't your first run on Kickstarter, correct?
Oh yeah, definitely not.
How many have you done? And can you tell us a little bit about your processes for Kickstarter, what I would call your best practices, and also things to do and things to avoid in your case?
Okay, so
maybe for somebody that's kind of new that's watching.
Okay, so best practices. One thing that you have to keep in mind with Kickstarter is you're most likely, like, unless you've been doing this like a lot of times, you're gonna be constantly finding new ways to innovate yourself and to figure out the best way to do how your process is. And everyone's process is different. There's not really a wrong or a right way to do it. But for me, I typically try to have as much of the book done as I can. And the main thing that you have to do with any kind of book is just be honest with your readers and let them know what's going on. Tell them how excited you are for the book. And just pretty much just show the amount of love that you gave to your book and show that towards them.
Gotcha. And Cece, how about you? So this is Attic Door Media, correct?
Yeah.
And that is your third one?
Yes, this is our third with Attic Door Media.
What would you say are some of your best practices, and what are some things that maybe a newer creator could potentially avoid that you've learned?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things that I think we've noticed that can sometimes be challenging for creators. One of those is sometimes it can be hard to be like genuine, to like dig really deep and find the thing. It can be hard to tell people like the deep reasons that you're making your work, because it can be hard to sometimes even know what they are. But people want to connect with you, so it's important to not just be a project, but also be a person who is doing the project, because that is something that people really connect to. Yeah.
That's a pretty good answer. And, I appreciate that you brought that up, because honestly, that's one of the things that we're trying to do here is to get to know the person. And what I learned, I'll throw mine in real quick too, is that I was falling into a trap. And what I was doing, I was going on an awful lot of podcasts and going, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And I think we all fall into that trap. And I like to learn about you, and I like to learn about Aaron and see who you are under the facade a little bit, right? Because we sometimes forget there is a living, breathing human being behind the project. And I think that the more you can connect with the author or artists, of course, I'm referring to artists as well, that the more you can learn about the person, sometimes they might feel a little bit more motivated to follow your work. And I guess one thing that I'd mentioned to try and avoid, and again, people, this is one man's opinion, right? You know, your mileage may vary, but I sometimes get bogged down in what I call the merch of the product, because sometimes we're always want to make sure we have these great big numbers on Kickstarter. When I say great big, I'm not a 5-figure guy. I'm a little guy. But, you know, when you get into the pins and the shirts and the hats, and, you know, I met this very nice lady who was helping me make hats. It was a super cool hat, by the way. It was like a Chinese infantry marching hat, and it had the Water Wars logo. It looked all apocalyptic. And she was very professional in what kind of font that I wanted and what kind of embroidery and what kind of stitching, and just doing a terrific job. And I was maybe 25 minutes into this, and I'm like, you know what, man? I don't want to be a hat maker. I'm a writer. I'm losing sight of the end game here. So I've sort of redoubled my efforts toward, and by the way, the future will bear in mind whether this is correct or not, but everything to me is geared toward just raising enough funds where I can make the next book. And if there's no t-shirts, that's something I've decided to live with, although I am going to have t-shirts on this one. So I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth.
I had a mission. My mission for Mythfall, actually, after our first Kickstarter, was to make all of the rewards flat. That was what I wanted most. I was like, I have big dreams, and all these dreams are going to be flat, and they're going to fit inside a Gemini mailer.
Oh, okay, great. You know what? I'm going to do this question next then, because it ties into what you said. Hey, we're all crowdfunding users, and one of the challenges for people and all creators who are using crowdfunding platforms. I'm primarily a Kickstarter guy, but you know, there's Indiegogo, of course, there's Crowdfunder now, there's Zoop, which some people say they're loving it, and now BackerKit is doing their own thing. So the playing field is getting bigger. And my question to you is this: first of all, do you do your own fulfillment? And if you do not, please tell us why. Aaron, you can go first. Do you do your own fulfillment for the campaigns?
I actually do. So
let me ask you, how many, roughly how many backers do you usually get on a project?
Well, honestly, I can't really say. All I can say is that last time I got 126, I believe.
That's pretty good numbers. Sure.
That is a pretty good number. And I was pretty happy about that.
Yeah, that's great.
But,
congratulations, man.
No, thank you.
Now, are you like me, though? And this is where I made my cutoff, and I want to hear what Cece says next. I get to 100, and I go, man, I'm spending more time at the post office. You know, I've got to somehow get back to my writing station, and I got to work on issue number 6. So my personal cutoff is 100. And I, for the first time, well, excuse me, this is the second time now, I've opted for professional fulfillment through Comics Wellspring, based right here in the US. And I understand that I could be more profitable if I shipped the books from China and got them printed there. And I, you know, got pirate ship, and I made my own labels, and I drove a truck full of books down to the post office every day. And by the way, I'm not disparaging anybody that does that. We all have different processes. But I couldn't, it was sapping my spirit. And where my cutoff was 100. And with a little luck, I'm going to be at 200 on this next one. And it was too much for me. I was like, you know, I can't do this. So I do take a cut. When I say take a cut, it's built into the funding. But it's, you know, I write the books and I create the Kickstarter, and it's kind of like a train leaving the station. I wave as it's saying goodbye. The downfall for me is I do not offer signed books now because of that. So that's slightly less personal, but I'd be curious to see what Cece says about that topic.
Yeah, so this is affected for us, I think, because we're a collective, because Addict Row Media is 4 of us. That's we can get quite an assembly line going. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, our pro packer is actually Brian. He's a boxing machine. Like, he can get a Gemini mailer folded in like 2.5 seconds. And then Mark is like on the laptop with pirate ship, and I weigh the packages. So like we ourselves are an assembly line, and that gives us we all come together after the project is over to do it all together, to ship everything together. And we're able to be pretty efficient that way.
Well, that's a great idea. And I tell you, it's not really a secret. Some people know that I used to be general manager of an auction house here in Pennsylvania. It's called Hakes Auctions, and they do high-end comic books and collectibles and things like that of a somewhat expensive nature for collectors. And every quarter they put out a catalog that goes to something like 3,300 people. And what they would do, and I always thought this was such a clever use of resources, they would basically ring the bell and everybody would report back to we have like a mail room, and you would spend a day just packing up catalog, like the assembly line, like you said. And I can't tell you how many times I said to myself, man, if I had this for my books, that would be great. But I'm primarily a solo act. Of course, I don't mean teamwork wise, but I am the only one that's based in the United States. So, it's I wish I had your division of labor, Cece.
Yeah.
That's something that I kind of wish I had. And every person's a little different, right? Like when you talk about, like I'm a little bit friends with Pat Shand just through Facebook, and I've supported a couple of his projects. And look, let's be honest, he's one of the titans of our industry, and he's got 600-700 backers on these things. And I watch, and he's fulfilling it himself. And I think it's himself, his wife, and maybe one other person. And man, my hats are off to those people. Of course, if you're getting that many customers and you have that much funding, it's probably takes the sting out of it, I bet. but as for me personally, it's a little bit. It's too much. Anything that's more than 2 weeks worth of me going to the post office, and then they say, well, hey, you can pirate ship and you buy the labels. And again, I'm one person till I'm rolling $400 or $500 into shipping materials and all this stuff. I'm thinking, oh man, that's halfway into the next book. I should be putting this into pages. I'm a page maker at the end of the day, you see.
True.
So thanks for sharing your feedback on that. And my next question I want to ask you both is, we're going to change it up just a little bit. And, we're all creators, and we all have various creators we admire, both in the past and in the present. And hopefully in the future, we'll be talking about each other saying, man, remember Aaron's great book, and remember Cece did so great on Mythfall. The question I want to ask you, and I'll ask Aaron first, who are some of the creators that you've admired in the past? And this can even be big names if it pleases you. And also, who are some current creators that you admire?
Okay. So in the past, I would have to give a big thumbs up to Alex Ross and Donny Cates. Alex Ross for his, his artistic style and how he's always able to make these lifelike paintings. And it just brings so much depth to the books that he's been on. And Donny Cates, he's an amazing writer. He's able to tell good narrative storytelling. His plot, most of the time, pretty solid. So, yeah. And currently, I would have to say I haven't really gotten to read any modern comics lately. But there's this guy. He has this book out called Thistleheart, and let me tell you, it reads so good. It's like the Sandman, but it's Sandman mixed with Swamp Thing, if that makes any sense. It's so
sounds
good.
Awesome. Who's making that book?
Oh, actually, no, I have it right here. Hold up.
I recognize the title.
Yeah. So this is the book right here. Hold on, let me actually.
You got your book.
Well, hold up. I'll give you the name of the author then.
Yeah, you can just tell if it's easier.
Yeah, definitely. It's by John Slim Jr.
Oh, yeah, sure, I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's really good. I gotta give more of his books a try.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, Cece, let's bring it around to you for creators you admire, some in the past and some in the present. And they can be indie creators too, if you want to focus on that. Whatever you like.
Sure. So one thing I read that's over, but it was fairly recent, is I read The Wicked and the Divine. And man, that was so good.
Good stuff, yeah.
Just like, not just the plot and the just whole look of it, but all the way down to the paneling. The stuff they were doing with paneling was so cool. And the characters and the story, that was just a really cool experience. I think I read it on like Comixology. I just like blew through all of it, and then slowly have been trying to collect the physical volumes so that I can possess it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really good. And then probably somebody who inspires me every day is like Rob Multari. Oh my god.
Oh sure, yeah. I'm friends with Rob. Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, sorry, I'm at like 10% brain strength at this point in the evening. But yeah, he has been. So we were part of the comics launch group, and we have been since we first started doing this whole crazy thing. And he's just been there, kind of like plugging away, putting out issues, and he just is like very kind to new people who are coming up and coming in, and and obviously Tyler as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good call.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just chime in a quick one because I don't want to be about me too much, but I'm a huge Grant Morrison fan, a huge Neil Gaiman fan, a huge Alan Moore fan. Those are the Titans from the past. My modern people, I would definitely mention Rob. I think he's got a very high quality book that he's putting out. And I like that he walks the walk as well as talks the talk. He is very supportive of the other creators. Also, shout out to my buddy Travis Gibb, who's doing terrific things. Special thanks to Ben Dunn over at Antarctic Press, my publisher. And also, although I understand he's not feeling too hot tonight, our network here over at the Comics Madness Network, thanks to Pops Van Zant for putting on these shows and help us to learn about the creators that are out there in the current marketplace. So my next question I want to ask you, you mentioned a little bit, I want to see which of us, a lot of people know already, I'm a comic collector, and I have been for many years. And some people might say that it is less relevant today in the advent of the digital age, then it's less relevant now than it used to be. But I want to get your opinions. It doesn't matter what I think. So first, Aaron, the quick question for you, are you a comic collector? And if so, what kind of things do you collect?
I mean, I try to be. I usually collect comics that are very personal to me. Right now, I'm trying to collect all of the Fantastic Four comics and all the Thor comics. Yeah,
great one. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, dude, it is. I'm not so much into like floppy issues and individual valuable stuff. I just like the stories themselves.
Sure, of course. Yeah. Cece, how about you? Are you a collector?
I'm not like a collector. I will save things that have sentimental value to me. So like, because I really enjoyed Wicked and Divine, for example, I want to have it on hand, for me to touch, tactilely, to flip through the pages, to experience again. And that's what I'm looking for. When I read Sandman the first time, I actually read a bootleg copy, like, of the entire thing burned onto a CD. And then because I loved it, I started collecting the volumes. And, now I have them all, but only because I had already read it. But as far as like trying to find, like collectors, issue ones of like valuable, comics from the past, it's less about that for me and more about having the item that reminds me of the experience that I had with the work.
Well said. That's a terrific reason. Yeah. And I would say that it really, what's the right way to say this? Even though most people probably don't realize it, your answer is probably closer to the truth than most. What I mean by that is that it has less to do with owning the physical item and more to do with the way that it made you feel. Mm. I bet you that's the truth. And Aaron, since you mentioned, I'm a Fantastic Four collector too. And Cece, last year, 2 years ago for my birthday, my mom got me. My mom's a super cool lady. She got
Moms
me.
It's called.
Yeah, she got me what they call the absolute. Oh, hi, Mom. Give her a shout out. My mom got me the Absolute edition of the Sandman, and it's like this big leather-bound book. It's gorgeous.
That's nice.
And man, I just about peed my pants when she gave it to me. I was so excited. And on top of that, what a cool thing for a mom to do and to really know me so well to have such a cool gift.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So we sort
Aaron,
of touched.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I'll let you know. Go ahead.
Aaron had more to say about the topic and maybe Fantastic Four, the collection.
Yeah, I was gonna ask which one was your most your favorite issue?
My favorite issue?
Yeah, of all the ones that you've collected so far.
Well, I think I sort of touched on, I am a Sandman collector, so I'm a huge fan of that. And my favorite of that would be the Death. That's number 8. But I'm also a Fantastic Four collector, and I have a couple of the early ones, not particularly valuable or anything. Well, actually, they're all, depending on your perception of valuable. I don't have a number 1 or anything. but I got a couple in the teens and a couple in the 20s. And I would say the
Nice.
best ones are the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby issues that had the Silver Surfer and Galactus. And some would say that was the birth of what we would call today a graphic novel, because those issues collected together sort of told this epic story. And you got to figure in 1963, nobody was doing that.
Ah.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I like them. That's one of the reasons why I like them. So the next question I'd like to ask you, we talked a little bit about the digital age that we live in. And of course, it's a thing now. And my fastest growing category is digital backers. So my question I'd like to ask both of you is, how do you address the growing digital market with your product? And do you do anything that might be considered extra or special for your digital followers? Aaron, you take this one first.
Put it plain and simple. Digitals are just so. I mean, once you have all the materials, your hard, your print files and everything, it's easy to make a digital copy. So why not just charge them what the thing's actually worth? For Wolfsbane #2, I charged the first issue for the campaign at like $3, and the second issue is $5. Yeah. So it's pretty accessible to everyone. It's easy for people that are international because they have to pay more in shipping.
Right. So yeah, I'm going to come around to that. That's the question.
They're doing you a service, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was done. My bad.
Cool. And Cece, how about you? Tell us a little bit about how you approach digital and what might be something that you do for your digital followers.
Yeah. So we like to keep them in mind. And so we want to make sure they're like fun, interesting packages at the digital levels, so people can get stuff that's exciting and feels cool without having to hit a physical pledge level, and to not forget about them when it comes to like campaign updates or maybe stretch goals, to think about, to remember the digital in your backer pool, because that is sort of like if somebody's kind of interested and they want to get involved, but they're not sure if they're ready to go like 150% in, it's a great way to get that little taste. And it is straightforward from the fulfillment aspect as well, which is nice. So it's a kind of a win-win for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely something to it, and digital's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, and we also do like to include the digital in the physical packages as well, because that way people can read it on any format that they want.
Right. And there's always the possibility that some people are, like I say, they're comic collectors. They won't even open the brand new package. They'll seal it and collect it, and then they'll read the digital version.
We found that with issue 1, actually. We had some friends and family who backed issue 1, and we delivered the comics, and then they didn't want to read them because they were so excited to have the comic.
That's pretty cool, actually. That's pretty cool. Yeah, for our part, and first of all, I'll offer both of this to you. I have gotten involved with the digital swap partners, and if you back my book at any level, it comes with all my partner books. And what I mean by that, I think it's 17 now. So you could back my book at the $5 level, and you'll get 17 digital titles. And by the way, that's open to you guys too. If you'd like a free copy of my book, I'll give you a free digital PDF, and you can offer it to any of your backers in any way that you like. My hope is just that someone will notice the book, you see.
I feel that.
Yeah. And that is something that, especially for digital people, you want to provide bang for the buck. And the other thing we do, we make, it always has a downloadable theme song. We make a little song for each issue.
Nice.
Yeah. We're doing a theme song for Mythfall that'll be available with the
I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah. We're on the same boat then.
Are you a song guy too, Aaron?
I mean, yeah. I have a song or two that I'm doing on mine.
Okay, well, hold on a second. This applies then. I'm going to ask a songwriting question. Okay, so we'll just change.
I don't like songs anymore. That was like a high school thing.
Oh, gotcha.
That's funny. That's same for me too. Actually, I have like 2 songs that I wrote in high school, and then I was like, not this.
Let me ask you. So, are you guys? Were you songwriters, lyricists? What is your songwriting process?
Well, I was mainly a lyricist. I'm currently learning the guitar now. It's pretty hard,
Nice.
but I can't see myself trying to figure out words and then also on top of that writing an entire score for the song. I couldn't do that.
Right. Cece, how about you?
Well, I was in a poetry club in high school, so
So we're all nerds. I was in a poetry club too.
yeah.
That's where all the cool kids were.
So it turns out we're all writers.
Yeah, and I was a songwriter too for many years, and for something like 9 years, I was a professional musician. Never really got a whole lot of traction with that. As you can see, I'm not hanging my gold records on the wall behind me, but we do write our own songs for our campaigns. And by the way, that's a service we provide. If anybody would like it's a high grade 32 track digital recording it'll blow your mind if you're ever so inclined. I definitely would offer some of the songs for free to show you. They're framed. They sound a little bit like John Williams. They sound a little bit like Star Wars or Indiana Jones, something like that. And then they become metal songs at the end.
Oh,
okay, that's
cool.
that's up my alley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, we're all metalheads over here. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you something interesting. You might think this is cool. For the new book, music plays a prominent role. And what I mean by that, the main character has like a transistor radio that she listens to, and the lyrics often filter into the scene. But as you know, you can't really put lyrics into a comic panel because you are potentially in violation of a copyright issue. And, you could get a cease and desist. So at the last minute, we decided to create our own band and lyrics. So all the stuff still has music, but it's all a fictional band. It's a fictional metal band from the 1980s called Turn Back Dorothy.
Yo, that sounds pretty tight. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. I hope you'll check it out. So let's see. I have a couple more questions I want to ask you before we go to time. There's varying degrees of success for writers and comic creators and Kickstarter makers, whether they're musicians, poets. I try to support all people's projects, and there's, like I say, there's no wrong way to do it. But Aaron, what does success look like for you? Meaning, what is your goal that you're trying to hit? What would make you go, man, I made it, I hit it?
Honestly, I'm not really in for this for the money. I believe me, there's a way that I could make books and live comfortably without having to charge people for it. I would, but I don't know. Like what I prefer is, and I get a lot of inspiration from writers like Hans Christian Andersen, H.G. Wells. They were able to tell an engaging story that were able to captivate millions of people. And the thought of just having somebody look at your book and getting something out of that, it means a lot to me.
Great answer. And Cece, how about you? What is your end goal, or what would make you say this is what success means to me?
So when I first imagined this project, it's not like a super good idea in publishing to like show up at a publisher with like a 150,000 word doorstopper and be like, this is my first novel. They don't love that. So I had thought, like if I shop it around and like it gets, I get my stack of rejections. If nobody decides to pick this up, I might, publish it like online chapter by chapter for free. And then, if like 100 people read it, that would be so cool. Yeah. And so I think if I hit 100 backers, I'll be really excited because like goal achieved.
It's a great goal.
Yeah, it really is.
I think the thing that I want, and the reason why I'm on Kickstarter is because I guess when you tell a story, I think the hope is that you put it out of the world and it connects to someone else and it connects you to someone else. And so my hope is that with Kickstarter, I can find the people who are going to connect to this project and who are going to love it. And that, it will have that connection between, artist and audience that makes the art, that makes it art. Yeah. And so that's what I'm hoping to achieve. And, if it turns out that we can like afford to do this multiple times. It's a really long book, so and art, it's a lot of art, and so the being able to have it fund itself is what's going to allow it to continue. And so, while it's not the goal, if I want to keep doing it, it's kind of like the reality. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great answer, and I tell you, well, first of all, there's all kinds of people in the world, but I want to tell you, you have both done something impressive, and I'm going to tell you what it is. You've done it, and here's what I mean by that. I talk to all kinds of people in the creative community, and without being discouraging to anybody, a lot of people get sort of bogged down and they just spin their wheels and spin their wheels and spin their wheels. And the hardest thing to do is to take your story, your project, your book, and sort of pat it on the rear end and send it out the door and say, this one's done, go out into the world.
True.
Because one of the qualities that we all seem to have, and by the way, feel free to correct me if I got this wrong, we're all a little bit perfectionists, and we say things like, well, this one's just not done yet, and I gotta edit this, and the colors are not quite right, and I blah, blah, blah. And if you're like that, man, the project's never going to see the light of day. So to both of you and to all creators that have completed their projects, congratulations, you did it. You know what I mean? That's really the hardest part in my view. So, so congratulations to you both. One of the last questions, and we're getting a little bit close to the time. We can go a little over. It's okay. But one thing I'd like to ask is, and I'll start with Aaron, we've got some pretty diverse projects here, right? And they're all different types of audiences and all different types of creators. Aaron, who do you think would love your project? If you had to describe who your target audience is, who do you think would love it?
I'd say my target audience would be the people that love the strange, the spooky. If you also like heartfelt moments like the Goonies, for example.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. And if you also like to think and figure out things, we have a lot of that too.
Not bad, not bad. And CC, same question for you. Out of all the people that could potentially back your book and buy it, who do you think is going to just love it and say, man, I love Mythfall?
I think what I was hoping to help people feel, I guess, is, at least for issue 1, is like a sense of wonder. I have these kind of like sci-fi vistas of star fields, and I think on the page I say, if galaxy print is your aesthetic, but just this sort of like a sense of the scale of it, then I think that's what I want to create, the feeling of this, like this excitement of discovery. Like there's all these new places, like new cultures to explore, new histories to learn, new characters to meet, and to kind of fall into the world and kind of inhabit it. That's one thing that I've always enjoyed in the stories that I connected with, kind of like falling into that world and kind of swimming around in it. So I hope that I can provide that for someone who's looking to get lost.
Yeah. That's a good answer too. And I think that you kind of hit on something. The best books and the best songs and the best poems are the ones that you kind of fall in and you don't necessarily want to climb back out, right? You kind of enjoy the falling in, and it isn't really like being stuck. It's kind of like, the embrace of a friend or a loved one. You kind of, hey, I'm just going to stay here. This is great in here. And I'm definitely one of those types that when I get to the end of a good book, it's almost a bummer, kind of, and not in the sense that I didn't love the book, but the opposite. Like, man, I don't want it to be over. Like, and I know you say, hey, well, sometimes there's a sequel or sometimes there's a next book, but there's nothing quite like that experience of falling in love with a book for the first time. And in closing, I want to ask one question about Kickstarter, because I notice all 3 of us are Kickstarter users. First off, have any of us ever used any of the other ones? I have not.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, did you mean like backing on it or
well no, let me ask this a different way. Why Kickstarter instead of Indiegogo or Zoop or anything like that? CC, you can go first. How did you choose
Oh.
Kickstarter, and why did you choose it?
Yeah. So I guess I've been kind of like a in the Kickstarter fan space for a long time. I think my first Kickstarter that I backed was an album. I want to say it was Kim Bookbinder, who was doing like an album themed around the galaxy. So that's consistent.
It does actually sound cool.
Yeah, it was in 2011. And so I think Kickstarter was like the only one at that time. And shortly after that, we play Dungeons and Dragons. There may be a vibe that you picked up from me.
Yeah, we do too.
Yeah, and so we ran a blog where we were basically interviewing games creators from Kickstarter because as I again, you probably know very well, there isn't a ton of outlet for people to talk about their projects. And so we ran a blog to help people crowdfunding talk about their games. And so we got to meet a lot of really cool creators. I think we interviewed the crew from Modifius when they were doing Action Cthulhu. And we were always really excited just by Kickstarter as a platform and as an idea and as the way that it connected people with their audience. And I think it also has a decent amount of like consumer protections. So with the way that, you know, the money gets returned if you don't fund and stuff like that, I felt that it had like more security compared to something like Indiegogo. Although Indiegogo is really important if you're not in the United States because Kickstarter was limited for a really long time there. So Kickstarter was really the natural choice for us, having been Kickstarter backers for so long.
Gotcha. And Aaron, how about you? Why Kickstarter instead of one of the other ones?
That's mostly where the fans I managed to get come from. Like,
Gotcha.
Honestly, I do love Kickstarter, and the people I met there are pretty nice. They have interesting ideas, and they offer a lot of support. That's pretty much it.
Awesome. And I just chime in. I'm pretty much the same way. I had started there and I felt like they were pretty good to me. And now I have enough of a following where I wouldn't necessarily want to leave them. I don't know if they would pursue me over to another site. I will say, I guess I'm pleased that there's competition that usually leads to better products. But I don't think I would necessarily jump ship at this point. There was certainly nothing that happened that aggravated me. I'm on my sixth one or something, but
they had been talking about crypto, and so at that point we had considered maybe, I'm
not a fan of that either.
But they seem to have walked back from that. But I think it's always good for there to be options, particularly because their Kickstarter does certainly have its limitations, and so to have variety means it's more likely that creators are going to find the platform that's the right fit for them, whatever that happens to be.
Okay. So in closing, let's just go around. We're going to just do a quick refresher, Aaron and Cece. Just tell us one more time about your book and where we can find it. And I'll put the links up while you're talking. Aaron, if you want to start out, tell us, you're getting your pre-launch ready for Wolfsbane, this horror detective story, which I'm really looking forward to. And tell us a little bit about it and where we're going to be able to find it. Okay.
So Wolfsbane is... the story where being a werewolf isn't the worst thing in the world. This teenager, after discovering that he's a werewolf, he has to choose. He has to try and find a way to find some sort of normalcy in his life, and that's pretty hard to do when you're not only on the run for murder, but you have to do all this crazy stuff to protect your town from supernatural creatures. So we're launching in May 17th, 2023 this year. And we also have our website coming up pretty soon at the end of this month if you decided that you wanted to check out the first book.
That sounds terrific. I'll look forward to it. And Cece, same question for you. Cool. I know it's a cool premise, right?
I love that so much.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I knew Aaron a little bit before this show, and I thought he was cool before because we discussed our love of universal monsters. So
I don't know if you see me.
we're nerds behind the scenes as well. But man, it's also been a thrill for me to meet Cece, and I'm telling you, without any exaggeration, I stumbled across Mythfall, and I very rarely say this. I said, man, that looks cool. And what I'd like you to do is, again, just give us a quick pitch, tell us where we could find it, and tell us why Mythfall is awesome.
Yeah, so I'll give you like the cool pitch. So what if you told a lie that changed the course of history for 5,000 years? This is the story of such a lie and how it eventually came crumbling down.
That sounds terrific, man. And the artwork looks terrific. And I want to say, I wish both of you the best of luck with these projects. And if you ever need any help promoting it or anything like that, I would love to help in some small way if I could. And I'd like to thank you for coming on the Creative Cranium. I really enjoyed meeting you both. They're terrific interviews and very interesting people. And viewers, I'd recommend you drop everything you're doing and go right now to try and support these projects. Again, thank you, Aaron Jordan, and thank you, Cici Affini. Yep. It was a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for coming on the show, and I wish you every success.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Good night, everybody. Take care.